a very good afternoon to all those watching. So I'm Little Miss Wow, and this is our next instalment in our Wow Hour. And we like to invite some very exciting guests onto the Wow Hour. And obviously this one, because of lockdown, is absolutely being done by Zoom. And my guest today is Jennie Treeby. And I'll get Jennie to introduce herself to you shortly. But Jennie is a business manager, and Jennie works for one of our client firms, boosst, up in near Northamptonshire. No, it's Northamptonshire, isn't it? Yeah, Northamptonshire.
Just outside Milton Keynes, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things that I really liked about, and what actually prompted us doing this Wow Hour today, was the fact that during lockdown, during the coronavirus lockdown, Jennie has coordinated 2 new hires and 2 new, obviously, inductions. So 2 new people joining the boosst team at a time when a lot of firms are actually almost like a rabbit in headlights, you know, in this area. So Jennie, I am very, very excited to have you on our Wow Hour. So tell everybody a little bit about Jennie and why you're in a bright pink top and what you do.
Okay, so I'm Jennie. So I have been in the industry since 1999. Fell into it like most people out of school. Temped for a little while in a very small mortgage broker, and decided that actually I really quite like this. And then fell into an office junior role at a financial advising firm. Stayed there for 18 years. Worked my way up through the ranks. By the time I left there, I'd gone through 3 takeovers / mergers, and I got to a point where I was managing 5 different offices across the country and about 25 people.
Wow.
Yeah, so the job kind of evolved for me organically, but the last takeover for me, or when we were acquired, should I say, I just fancied a change, and I thought, you know what, actually, I really enjoyed working for a small firm. So it just kind of coincided. Keith had got in touch with me. I'd met Keith several years beforehand, for when we were first acquired and my job was put at risk. So I'd sort of put the feelers out to find out what was around. So I'd met Keith and Josh at boosst, MDG as they were then. Met them a few years prior. Keith just happened to drop me a LinkedIn message one day saying, how's things? We've got loads of changes. Would you like to come and talk to us? And it just literally was a smooth transition for me.
Wow.
So very much right place and right time, I think.
Yeah.
So boosst, to give you a little bit about boosst. So hence the pink. So the boosst brand colours are pink and purple. So I've kind of come fully boosted today.
And you're in good company, I have to
say. Absolutely. All the best companies' brands are pink and purple. So boosst came about, launched in September 2018. Keith and Josh, father and son business, had previously been appointed representatives of another firm, and decided over sort of a couple of year period that they were at a point that they really wanted to stand on their own 2 feet and become directly authorised. And from that, really, boosst was born. Mm-hmm. So they brought me in whilst the rest of the team were carrying on working under the previous firm. They brought me in onto the leadership team to basically build boosst, which was really, really exciting and a real honour to be a part of. So that's a little bit sort of about me and boosst, really.
So your role is a business manager. That's your title.
Practice manager that we refer to, yeah.
And one of the things that people that watch these Wow Hours and have heard me speak before kind of know my obsession with this role. It's even more important, or was more important, even more important at boosst, because they actually took you on to effectively set up a business that didn't exist. So to almost project manage. So just in summary, like, why do you think that business manager role is so essential in a financial planning firm that doesn't have much to do with clients and doesn't do power planning reports, and that is the business practice manager?
Yeah. Okay. So what I found in firms as I grew through financial services, it became apparent very quickly that you need somebody to pull everything together. Yeah. So you need somebody who either has a good understanding or has worked in different departments within a financial planning company or financial advice company. So you've got your sales, you've got your compliance, you've got your admin, you've got your para planning, and it can all become incredibly fragmented if you're not careful.
Yeah.
So my first sort of role in this area was I'd worked in an administration function in my first role for quite some time, and you'd find yourself the advisors would go off for a conference, and they'd launch something new at this advisor conference, and suddenly the advisors would come back and say, oh, we've got this new brilliant way of working, and the administrators are like, well, actually, we don't know about this. Yeah. And suddenly you had this really fragmented, and then you start to get sort of conflict between the advisors and the administrators. So I actually went to the managing director where I worked previously. I had a really good relationship with him. And I said, there's a gap here. We need to fill this gap. We cannot have a situation where advisors are being told one thing and administrators aren't aware of it, or vice versa even. So then really in that firm, the operations manager role was born, and I kind of filled it. So fabulous. And even in a small firm, you just need somebody who understands everything within the business. You don't have to be an expert, don't get me wrong. I'd probably struggle if you asked me to write a report, or, I'd struggle if, I can't give advice, but you need to have a really good understanding of it, just to try and pull it all together and keep it on track. And do you love your job? I mean, I know it has its challenges. I know it has its challenges. I absolutely love my job. And the reason I wanted to come back to small firm, probably because I'm like the nosiest person and I like to be involved with everything. And I found working in a bigger firm, it's very difficult to be ops because it becomes too big, and then you end up with an ops team and suddenly you still have to specialize in an area. Whereas what I really love about being in a small firm is I actually touch everything. I get involved with everything. Which is really nice. Well, I always say that role is like, it's like the conductor of the orchestra. Actually, it has an appreciation for the sound of the orchestra, but actually can't play any one or more of those instruments. But their sole job is to effectively make sure that the magic happens. Absolutely. Do you think that takes a certain type of person to do that? I think so. I think you do have to sort of be quite nosy. That's like one of my things I see as a strength rather than a weakness. And you do want to, you just want things to run smoothly. I think, you've got to have fairly high standards. My standards at the moment still aren't quite as high as those of Keith and Josh. So they're sort of training me to get to where their standards are, which is do hard. Absolutely. You've always, you can always strive for better. Absolutely. But with the sort of guidance of standards, which I'm sure we'll come on to, that's really, and I think as well, you really have to be a people person, because by touching all those different departments, you've obviously got very different people. Salespeople are very different to technical people. So you've got to be able to, to work with lots of different types of people. So in terms of obviously the job that you do, so let's cut right to the chase, right? So if we've got a financial planner who runs a business and they're dithering over whether they need a practice manager or a business manager, or they can do these things themselves, and surely they know how to run a business, what would you say to a planner, business owner that's sitting on that fence going, oh, I'm not really sure, and actually doesn't necessarily immediately see the value in a practice manager because they're not fee earning? What would you say to them if you could sock it to them kind of thing? What would you say? Yeah, so I appreciate that it's quite, it is a journeyman role. I completely get that. And it can be quite an expensive journeyman role. But that said, I'm a firm believer in you have your people doing what they should do best. So if you've got somebody who is an amazing business financial planner, as an example, why are they spending a quarter of their time running around making sure Gabriel returns are done on time, and making sure secure messages from clients are and emails are dealt with, and workflows are being dealt with? So I'm a firm believer in you take people, you have them in the best, that they should be doing the job that they are good at and best at, particularly advisors and planners, because they are the people that are bringing the business in, money into the business. And, in our firm, for example, we've got 3 of those. We've got a team of 11 people, but actually only 3 people bring money into the business. We all obviously have an impact on the money coming in, but they are the physical people bringing money in. And you know, I would hate to think of Keith running around worrying about whether, you know, somebody's workflows are done on time, or, you know, worrying about building something in IO or income allocated, you know. So stick to your skill set, basically.
Well, and also, you know, you touched on it just briefly there, but, you know, and almost flighted over it. You know, we know that every person plays a component part to generate income, but effectively in a traditional model firm, you're talking about, or the expectation would be that, well, you know, everybody generates income to contribute to the bigger picture. So a multiple of your salary, or, for example. The bottom line is the only two real roles that can do that directly are that of the planner advisor and the power planner. Yeah. But because you do your job so well, basically it means that the power planners can power plan, the planners can plan, because you pretty much pick up everything else.
All the other stuff. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And that's the point, isn't it? And, you know, and that's where the role is so varied, because one day I could have, you know, an HR issue thrown at me. Yeah. One day there's a marketing thing needs dealing with. The next day it's month end. Then it's the Gabriel return needs doing. So, you know, it is literally every single day is different, which is why I love it.
Absolutely. And another point on that, and when I say the word senior, I don't actually mean in age, because one of the things that we see a lot, and I call it the kiss of death, and I call it the kiss of death all of the time, right? And it's basically where a firm has got an aspiring administrator, effectively probably a junior, probably inexperienced, but that's keen and energized, etc., etc. And what do they go and do? When they ask for a pay rise, they go, oh, well, let's make you office manager. Right? Or they'll say, you know, well, we'll make you practice manager. And this poor person, male or female, you know, is kind of a bit wet behind the ears. How important do you think, because I'm very anti that approach, right?
Yeah.
In terms of seniority and maturity, where do you sit on the sort of scale of it needs to be somebody who's got a bit of experience under their belt? And I can add kind of how I feel about it after, but as opposed to having youth, inexperience, you know, how do you feel about what I've just said?
Yeah, so I agree. I think it's a role that it is down to experience. You know, you do need to have a really good industry knowledge. You know, you need to know your rights from your wrongs. Ideally, you will have been in a firm where you will have sort of dabbled a little bit in compliance, because, you know, you do need to understand the regulatory side of it and have a good understanding of, you know, the compliance within your business. But yeah, I mean, you don't need any qualifications to do it. You know, I've got limited financial services qualifications, so I do see it that it would be a role that's a perfect stepping stone for somebody who's coming through, been a really, really good administrator, but you know, they do need a good 7 or 8 years experience, I would say, behind them, and been in a position where they've been able to touch other areas of the business as well. Just because if you're going to be the cog that like the glue that holds it all together, you've got to, you know, you have got to understand it all.
Well, and also just to add to that, and kind of this is my sort of stock position on it really is, you know, for anybody that knows Keith and Josh, you know, we're talking about Keith and Josh Button. Anybody that knows Keith and Josh, and from my experience of 20 years, you are probably supporting two of the most stubborn, most kind of on it like a car bonnet advisors I've ever met in my life, right? Yeah. And what comes with 7 and 8 years worth of experience is confidence, Jenny. Yeah. Because we've had conversations whereby, you know, you've got to stand up to the boys. You know, you've got to push back, haven't you? You can't just go, oh yeah, well, we'll just do that because you said. Yeah. You know, so the younger, less experienced administrators who are given these massive job titles are just absolute pushovers, and that's not the job, is it? So talk to me. You know, I could talk about confidence for flipping days, right? Talk to me about how important you think confidence, what role confidence plays in that role.
Yeah, so confidence is hugely important, of course. You know, you've got to be confident in the role that you're doing. You know, I mean, it's always hard, isn't it, to judge, particularly in a family business, you know, where you kind of sit in the pecking order, because whilst I'm on the leadership team, you know, there is obviously always there is still the shareholders and the owners over myself and Vicky, who also sits on the leadership team. But you know, and initially it is nerve-wracking. It is nerve-wracking to push back. But you know, my role, I sit in the middle effectively. It's a middle management role. You've got your directors that are, you know, giving you loads and loads of things to do, and you know, they're desperate to drive the business on, and you know, they're always 3 years down the line when we're sort of still stuck in year one. They're already planning, and you know, they're on year 4 already of Boosst. And you know, and then you have to think about your team that are working with you, you know, not below you, but you know, so your team that are the doers. And you know, and there's been a few times that I have had to say to them, you know, they want to bring something new in, or you know, launch some other part of a business that, you know, and I'm just like, we haven't got the capacity yet. You know, we're not walking. Let's not start running. And you know, but that said, I think whilst those conversations are always difficult, I think they do respect the fact that, you know. I do say no, but no, confidence, absolutely. You know, you almost need to have been, you do need a lot of confidence, and you know, be confident in what you're saying as well. You know, as long as you can back up what you're saying, then there's never an issue. But if I just say no, then clearly they're going to push forward. But if you can say no with evidence, then clearly that's
well. And also you talk about, you know, when we talk about office assistants and administrators and client services assistants being given these glorified job titles, you know, effectively a person in an administrative position is there to administer the work. People who are in assistant positions are there to assist, regardless of what's given to them. Okay, you are not in that role, and that manager title holds a huge amount of responsibility. And sadly, the title is given willy-nilly all over the place, right? So, I mean, we'll probably pick up on that. I want to pick up on, and we'll come to the recruits during lockdown thing towards the end, but our relationship with Boosst as a standards business and effectively as a coaching support infrastructure and team, I know that Boosst are a massive advocate for, forget standards specifically in terms of the ISO and the BS, but if you're going to do something, flipping bloody hell, like do it the best you can absolutely do it. Absolutely. Otherwise go home. It? Right. So what does that feel like being part of that, when standards are, like you've even alluded to it already, like, you know, I'm not quite up to Keith and Josh's standards, but they're teaching me. Talk a bit about that.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because where I came from before, what you did was always good enough. Whereas to come and work with Keith and Josh, where standards are so incredibly high, is, you know, and the thing is that the good thing about that is it always challenges me. So, you know, I'm constantly thinking, you know, if I do something, I walk away from it, take 24 hours, walk back and read it as if it was Keith that, you know, was reading it. And so, you know, it's really sort of made me take my time over things a bit more. You know, really sort of dig deep, if you like. You know, I know I've got it in me. It's just a case of trying to pull it out. So it has been like everything I do is a challenge. You know, they've taught me so much already. You know, I even like this time as an example, I recently did my Gabriel return, and the first time I did my Gabriel return, it was a bit of a half-assed attempt, to be honest. Whereas this time I was like, right, I'm going to absolutely nail this, because when I show it to Keith and go through it with Keith, I don't want him to have any questions. I want, if there's a question, I want to be armed with the answer. So I really did like take my time over it, and you know, it took us 10 minutes to go through it rather than an hour that it took us before. And then suddenly you can start to see your own improvement. So it's always it's like my own objectives now, to have as least time with them as possible when they're checking something for me.
Well, it's like I've said to you before, like, you know, when we've had our kind of group calls and stuff, it's like, you know it's in you, and it's you've got to show them what you're made of. Otherwise, the profession will never appreciate that role. And while ever the profession is putting glorified administrators in these great big roles, they're just disappointed with what practice managers are. But that's because they've not got a proper one, right?
No.
So you're taking that on. So one of the things then, they do have high standards, and you know, you are giving it your absolute best. But one of the challenges that I see a lot is how emotional or how many people in your role, and probably those with less experience than you, how they take things so personally, right? And I know for a fact, if you took on board personally all the shit that's been hurtled at you over the years, you'd be a flipping quivering wreck, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Talk about that. Talk about that for me.
Wow. So that is a good question. So yeah, I mean, you do have to be thick-skinned. Absolutely. Again, you are that middle layer of management. So you do basically take all the rubbish from the bottom up and all the rubbish from the top down. So you are squeezed. There are times that, I'm not going to lie, there are some things that have been said to me over the years and I've just gone home and sobbed into my pillow. That's just one of those things. But ultimately, every time you deal with one of those things, you do become stronger.
Absolutely.
And you do just get... Job. Absolutely. And, sometimes it's something that you think, actually, do you know what? There's some things that I can turn into positives there and things that I can improve myself. There's some things that you think, actually, that's bang out of order. I'm not going to take that on at all. So, that again is just an experience thing, really.
Is. Well, and then when you get those moments where you're like, absolutely, they've overstepped the mark. But then it comes back to the confidence of going, and I'm going to tell them they have.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? And that's the thing. Yeah, that is the thing. It is, again, it all boils down to confidence. And, some days you have just sensitive days. So you might have taken something in actual fact, when you slept on it, that, you thought actually maybe it wasn't meant in the context it was taken. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I am a person, if somebody says something to me that upsets me, I'm never going to confront them immediately, because I will take away, I will sleep on it. And then I'll think, actually, do you know what? I was a sensitive day yesterday thinking about what they said. Then, I'm not going to take it any further. Other things you might think, actually, do you know what? I am going to raise that because, that wasn't fair, or that was out of order. So that's my one piece of advice, is just to always digest something. Don't do something in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, I think it's so important, and I mean, I have a huge amount of, as I know you do, you have a huge amount of respect for Keith and Josh. They don't always get it right. The same as they have a huge amount of respect for you because you've pushed back and because you're making strides to really improve Boosst, and you don't always get it right, and that's why if I ever thought that the relationship, or you'd left your role, or they decided it wasn't working, I'd be gutted. Because it would almost be like, but they were so good together. But you know what I mean? It's almost like you if you look at them two as a one and you as a one, you are the two perfect halves of the coin, the perfect sides of the coin, aren't you? And so complementary in so many ways. But it's a challenge, right? It's not an easy...
Oh, it is a challenge. Like, every day is a challenge. But then, if I didn't want a challenge, I wouldn't be in this role.
I agree. I know. And I think that's the point. Anybody that's in that role has to love a challenge. And that's why, most people just can't hack it. They can't, because they're there as a submissive assistant doing what's asked of them. And actually it needs more pushback than that. So, I love having these chats, and I always love talking to you, Jennie. Absolutely. So we've talked about standards and the fact that they are super high on the standards, and you are one of our very few firms that is actually pretty much, apart from the power planner standard, but that's just because of the timing and stuff. You're probably one of our very few firms that have adopted BS 8577, BS 8453, which is the compliance standard, and ISO 2, which is the standard for planners.
Yep.
Why have you done that?
So as you know, when I joined Boosst, Keith and Josh were already in communications with you to get the standards. And the reason being is when they were launching the new business, they literally wanted it to be the best it could be. So, we effectively started with blank page. So we called it blank page financial planning. So to build a business and to have the time to build a business was just amazing. But then starting with a blank page is also daunting. So whilst we could build the client journey and make sure that we had everything there, in terms of the BS 8577 in particular, it was just making sure that we had all the other documents that we would ever need. At the moment, the absolute prime example is we had a disaster recovery plan. Admittedly, it didn't cover pandemic, but it covered something something similar. So it came into its own. It does now cover pandemic.
Oh, very cool.
But, it's just to know that, whatever happens, we've got all those documents to hand, we've got something written down, and we know, at least you've got a starting point, even if it's evolved slightly or needs to evolve for whatever the situation, we haven't got a blank piece of paper. And it's also really good. We are a small firm. We only know what we know, so ideas can get quite stale. So to have the annual assessments and having standards coming in and chats with you, it just keeps our ideas fresh. And I had my day with the practice managers last week, which suddenly again, it just boosts me, and I go away and make a load of tweaks and improvements. So it's really, really good. And so really we did it, obviously to get the standards, to show that, we've really put ourselves through all of the effort to get them ready to launch a business. But the main reason for the ongoing support is just to keep some fresh ideas and fresh blood coming through a business that could get quite stale otherwise with a lack of ideas. And
and it's a family business, so it's very family insular too.
It is, yeah.
It's not like you've got two business partners and one goes home to their family and friends and one goes to the other.
Absolutely.
They live together pretty much, socialise together pretty much, and it is an insular environment. So one of the things that I remember from when we first did, so one of the, and I think you were there, I remember now actually, timelines. We did the initial gap analysis. And I remember, you were there, weren't you? And
I was there. The first time I met you, Yeah,
and we did the kind of the gap analysis on where basically, for those that are watching, a gap analysis is basically where we get all the standards in one hand and we got boosst in another. And we said, right, where are all the gaps in this business meeting these standards? And I remember coming in and doing kind of a presentation to Keith. Keith just didn't want the report sending over. Keith wanted literally to draw blood out of me. He did. And I remember sitting in that room that day, and I was, oh my God, I went home, I was exhausted. But, I kind of walked in equipped with these reports of where the gaps were. And I just remember him going, what else can we do? What else can we do? What else? Is there anything else?
Yeah.
Is there anything else we can do? What about that? And I just was like, good Lord. I mean, in terms of wanting to know everything, but that, interestingly, that kind of, although I wasn't absolutely exhausted, because I don't think there was another idea in my brain that I could have shared with you, that shows me that, well, if they're that bothered, we will be that bothered, and we'll do everything we can. So that's where it's kind of a mutually beneficial relationship, because we love you lot, the fact that you're not going to settle for just enough or mediocre. And it's fabulous to send talk a little bit about the office, because that's on a whole nother, like, just to give everybody the context, just explain to the people that are going to watch this about the office. It's not just an office, the office.
So when I first met Keith and Josh, we are probably going back to 2014. They showed me their plans for a new office back then. So that's when I first met them for an interview to be I can't remember what it was now, paraplanner, I think. Anyway, so then we parted company, and then I've met them a couple of other times. And then I came back again in 2018 and met them again. And they were literally just got the planning through for this office, and I mean it is unbelievable, the size of it, and so Keith and Linda, so husband and wife, and Linda obviously being Josh's mum, so a real family business, have a beautiful old farmhouse on about 12 acres of land, and their plan and vision was always to build this office on the land, and they were to build a lake that the office would overlook, etc. So building finally started after about 7 years of planning, and I mean it was ridiculous. We had everything. We had bats in trees that couldn't be chopped down. We had newts in water, so building couldn't be put through. So they encountered absolutely every single obstacle you could whilst trying to build a building. But building must have finally started in about, I want to say, December 18, and then we moved into the office on the 2nd of September last year. And it is literally, I mean, it's a huge open plan office. It's full glass frontal. It's got I think it's an 1.5 acre lake that they dug. it's just absolutely stunning.
Doesn't it like warm its own water and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah. So it's completely eco-friendly. So the lake heats. It's a heat exchanger with the lake. So the water from the lake heats the office. We don't have air conditioning. It's all got particular angles of glass and windows, so you get a good through draft. So there's, it's completely sustainable. But it is absolutely, it's just ridiculous, really, the amount of effort that went into it. But again, it's absolutely, the standards are just unbelievable. The hours that went into just planning, the colours on the walls are the exact boosst RGB colours, and everything is just perfect. And then the standards that they work to. I mean, the poor builders. I mean, obviously, I don't think they've probably ever encountered somebody like Keith, when building a building.
When they're finishing that job, they're like, bloody hell, we've earned our money on this one. Oh my gosh! But absolutely right. I mean, there's a really lovely. One of these word swags that I share a lot, and it's like, raise your standards and people will meet you there.
It's true.
Those that don't want to meet you there will opt out of your life. And I think that's, it's like when I'm sure when it really gets tricky with the boys, and and there's been challenging times, but it's your choice, isn't it? Whether you keep learning and go, you know what, I'm going to flip and nail it. You're not going to have me on this one.
Yeah, and then that's it. That's what I turn it into, my own personal challenge. And the thing is, I know that I'll never ever hit their standard, because they will always find something. But then that's always given me a reason to improve myself. I get it. If for whatever reason, we did end up parting company in the future, I know that going into another job, all the things that I would have learned here. Oh, wow. It's just amazing, and then that's just through their time, really, and wanting everybody to be the best. And it's not just me they invest all that time in, they invest all that time in everybody, and they really want everybody to be the best they can be, which is lovely.
And it's super to see. I mean, we talk about how stubborn they are, but I think that is, I mean, this, and actually when I say it, and I keep saying it, it's not even a criticism.
No.
Bad things about lots of planners, but it's just how they are, isn't it? And that's challenging for you, but that tries you, and that enhances you, develops you, and that's what's so amazing about it. And that's why you have to be thick-skinned, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, and like initially it was really overwhelming, but actually now I accept that it is what it is. And I almost know that if I prepare something for them, not that it's going to get ripped to pieces, but there's always going to be room for improvement. And it's the way as well in which they, they'll pull you to one side and they'll talk you through it. They won't just sort of, rip it to pieces. They do sort of give you ways and means in which things can be improved, which is lovely. Josh is a really good writer. So, for example, I updated our risk assessments this week. So we've got our standards assessments this month. So I've been going through and doing all of my annual audits. Yeah. The way I write very much like I speak, whereas Josh has got a very nice way of writing. Yeah. So, he's improved some of the language that I've used. Exactly. So whereas I've put all the legwork in and all the thinking, he then makes it look
what my team would call that is, he comes in with the jazz hands and takes all the glory for it, right? That's what they reckon I do. I think it's all lies, actually, personally. I disagree with all of it, but it's a team effort. For sure. Yeah,
it is absolutely. And the more I work with Josh in that way, the more I'll get that language, and then hopefully the less input he'll need. So absolutely. It's all learning, and every day I learn something new. So and
there's never a dull moment, and that's amazing. So look, talk to me about these two new recruits, because this was obviously what prompted the WOW Hour, getting you on. So most firms are bricking it, I think it is easy to say. You mentioned something just before I hit the record button about how absolutely inducting them during lockdown, you have to be organised. Talk to me about, one, the decision not to put recruitment on hold, because that could have been the easiest thing you could have done.
Absolutely.
How you tackled it and how you felt about it, and the successes, really. So talk me through the journey.
Yeah, Yeah, okay. So we were already partway through recruiting our new technical manager at the point in which we went into lockdown. So we first met him in February. So he came into the office and had an interview. And we really liked him. Obviously, job offer was issued. So, and then he joined us. I think it was the first week of April from memory. So sort of 2 or 3 weeks into lockdown. So we were all still getting used to working from home. So, but yeah, it was, and we just took the time, myself, well, the leadership team, myself, Vicky, Keith and Josh really took the time about considering, so we put together an induction plan. So the first 4 weeks of his induction plan. So literally he spent time with all of us within that first 4 weeks just to get him up to speed. He read our Tom's bombs, whatever we want to call them. So which is
for people that think Jenny's lost it. That is it's the operational management system, and that's the kind of the framework which businesses operate when they run a system like BS 8+7. They call it the bombs, which is the what do you call it? What does it stand for? The
boost operating management system.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. But it's basically processes and procedures. Carry on.
It is, yeah. So he spent time reading those. So we literally had an hour by hour induction schedule for his first 4 weeks. So he knew at any one time what he was doing. We knew what he was doing. We then, so that was, so he had an external document. Internally, we had another document, which was a mirror of that. But then we had our measures. So within that, so from that hour that he was with Vicky, for example, what he should have learned, so what his outcomes were, and then how we were going to measure whether he was signed off as competent in that area, etc. So, we spent quite a lot of time investing in that document. And then we also had sort of an induction, we call it a progression log. So effectively every part of his role that he's going to touch, everything he's going to touch is in a massive spreadsheet, and we go through it with him. So we train initially, then he signs himself off as competent, and then we sign ourselves up as competent. We sign him off as competent. So it's really, really in depth. It took us ages to pull it all together, but it was absolutely worthwhile because I think he joined us obviously nervous because it's a new job, extra nervous because he's not really, he hasn't got sort of the office banter and getting to know people very well. But, he knew exactly what he was going to be doing for the first 4 weeks, which is brilliant. And now he's been with us he's just had his second month probation catch up with Keith and Josh. So that seems to be going really well. And then our second recruit, well, this one was a real bolt out of the blue because we weren't actually even looking for somebody. So Keith and Josh had met Chloe previously at a couple of conferences and seminars, and she reached out to them because she had been put on furlough with the company that she was with, a really small firm down in London, and sort of was quite, I think it was unexpected that she would be put on furlough, and then she just felt that it wasn't a company she wanted to work for anymore. So she reached out to Keith and Josh, not at all coming in as sort of quite a senior person, really, quite a senior sort of paraplanner role, not something we were looking for at all. Certainly wasn't in our strategic plan that we'd done with Michelle in December. Certainly wasn't
that would be me. So
certainly wasn't in the annual budget to take on somebody of that caliber. But we all sat down, discussed as a leadership team, and decided that actually
too good to miss.
We could really do with somebody, particularly with the development plans that we want to have in place in terms of bringing in new trainees. We decided that actually it was something or somebody that we could bring on board. So this one was even more daunting because she literally wanted to join. I think we offered her the job on one Monday. She wanted to join the next. So we were like, whoa. So anyway, we deferred her for a week just to give us 2 weeks to catch up. So obviously we'd spent the time on all the documents for John. We just adapted them for Chloe. And again, it's gone really, really smoothly. We're having our regular Zoom catch-ups as a team. So virtually she's met everybody. I mean, I haven't met her in person. Well, none of us have met her in person.
No.
So which is really bizarre. She's got no idea what the office looks like. So she's not been there. So she's got no idea what that's going to be.
She's going to cry. She'll be like, can I move in? Can I live here?
I know. So yeah, so she's got all that to come, which is just the most weird thing, isn't it? Taking on a job and having no idea what it's like.
Let me ask then. So during both of those inductions, those hires, who coordinated all of that?
So that was me, pulled it all together.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that's my absolute point. You can only turn stuff like that around when you've got somebody conducting the goddamn orchestra.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Imagine there's lockdown happening, a technical manager on the go, and there's no you. And then you get a CV dropped through your door like that, and there's no you to coordinate it. And you've got Josh and Keith trying to do business. Not a chance in this world would that have happened.
No, absolutely not. And you know, and it's things like that where the job does come into its own. So the negatives of being a practice manager and the negatives of
no. I'm really joking. Go on.
No, so the downside of it is because you do know a little bit of everything, you can get dragged into a little bit of everything. Yeah. So whilst we've been without a practice manager, between myself and Vicky, we've been filling the role of practice manager. So obviously technical manager. So Vicky's been picking up all the technical stuff, and I've been doing the stuff that the technical manager would do. So obviously that had kind of pulled me away. But that said, it also put me in really good stead to train John on all the stuff that I was doing. So whilst I've covered that role for 18 months, which has then pulled me away from doing some of the practice management stuff I'd love to do.
Yeah.
It did put me in a really, really good stead, allow me to improve some of our processes and procedures because I've touched it. So
absolutely.
So one of the things that Standard International do sort of advocate is everybody doing everybody else's role or touching people's roles, which is something that I would, as a practice manager, definitely, if you are, you know, overseeing processes, procedures, writing processes, procedures, building back office system procedures, if that's what you're doing, then I would absolutely say that, you know, you do want to either try and do somebody's job, obviously within your limitations, or at least shadow them so you can fully understand their challenges, and then you can build the best robust processes that you can.
Yeah. And I think I think that's right. I mean, you know, I talk quite a lot about, you know, I never ever want anybody, you know, we've always been educated in business for as long as I can remember. You know, we don't want people that say, that's not my job, I'm not doing it. However, there's almost a fly in the ointment in that statement. Is in some cases you do want people to say, that's not my job, I'm not doing it, but that's only because you want people to cover fully the role that they're in. So you've not said I'm not covering that technical manager's job with Vicky because that's not my job. What you're saying is that isn't my job, but I will cover it until we find the replacement. So you've not made it all your responsibility. You've almost stepped into a role that exists for it to be filled. And that's why it was always going to be a successful hire, because you'd already carved out, because of the org structure that we've worked on together, you'd already carved out that role down to the fine detail. So you were just covering it until you replaced it.
It was literally like holiday cover that just went on for a little bit longer than a holiday. That's all. And then you know, and also it just allowed me, because that wasn't a role that I had sat in previously, because obviously I've done the admin and I've done all of those bits previously. I hadn't done that role, so it really did allow me to understand the nuances of it, the challenges of it. So then when I was building processes so we use Intelligent Office, when I was using for building processes in IO, I could really nail them, because now John's coming in, and he has already brought up some bits where they can be improved, but ultimately at least he wasn't starting with nothing. He has got processes that do work.
No, it's great. I mean, I'm excited to meet him and Chloe, because I think you've done incredibly well, and what a successful induction on both parts. So, you know, being ready to take on a Chloe is incredible, right? But being able to actively engage with John from afar. I think you know, Jenny, you should be extremely proud of yourself, and you know I am, and you know the team here, when we talk about you, and you know I know we've touched on it just a moment ago there, in terms of, you know, we've set up you know, and I'll just kind of backfill a little bit for people's benefit, but we've set up the Association of Business and Operations Managers, and Jennie is one of our founding members. And, you know, we've got huge aspirations and plans to take that association further and global. And they had a meeting last week run by Dee and Richard, you know, who work within Sanders International. But, you know, it's because the role that Jennie's in, like she's talked about, is incredibly important, yet really underloved and appreciated and underdeveloped, and that's what we're trying to work on that. So, you know, there's more to come, and I'm sure we'll pick up another WOW hour when that sort of picks up, and we'll have all of the associated members on the call. But and I'm asking this as kind of as a favour for me. And this is a little bit of a big up for us, but only because it's really difficult. It's really difficult, I think, and I get frustrated at times when I know we as a business do so much good stuff, right? And I know, you know, in little bits and for different reasons for different people, but. And often it's quite tricky for people to get it, because standards is not a regulatory requirement. You know, it's not something that gets you a CII certificate. You know, it's something quite special. Just in your own words, really unprompted from me, just, you know, what I am going to say this next sentence, which is then not unprompted at all, you know, just share why you love us so much. Like, what do we do? And you know, if somebody was a total novice about what we do, just explain for me, would you?
Yeah. Okay. So really, for me, it is having access to other people. So people that have got fresh ideas, fresh thoughts, a full sweet library of every document you could ever wish. If you are literally starting from nothing to write your TOMs, you know, everything's there. You can just brand it and you know, do whatever you want to do with it. It's just really nice to know that, you know, you're working. Yeah, all right, they're not requirements. You're quite right. You know, you don't need it to run a business, but just to know that you're running, you know, with best practice. You know, one of the things that we didn't have actually, which was interesting as part of our assessment last year, and it was fed back, was, you know, what do you do if you get a notification of an FCA visit? What's your process? What are we going to do? And you know, straight away, we didn't even, you know, we would never have thought of it. We've never had an FCA visit. Hadn't even thought of it, but now we have got a document together, so we're not running around like headless chickens in a blind panic when you get an FCA visit, you know, notification. So, you know, it's just nice to know we've got those go-to documents. It's just nice as well to have an annual audit of everything that you do, just to make sure that, you know, we are on track. We are running a business that, you know, is sustainable and scalable as well. I think that's the other thing. Keith and Josh have got plans to sort of scale up the business, and everything we've got now is there. The feedback I've had from Chloe in particular, not so much John, but Chloe, she's worked in several businesses over the years and said that we are by far the most organised firm she's ever come into.
Wonderful.
So I know, so that's lovely, but that again is all really based upon, you know, all the standards and everything that you guys come in and assess for us. So really it's just really a rubber stamp to know that what we're doing is absolutely the right thing, and obviously for us as well, you know, clients are key, and if we've got everything right internally, our documents are where they need to be, then the client's going to have the best possible experience.
And you know, and on the flip side, you know, when we have the assessment reports, the team always, you know, when I read the assessment reports, and I do tend to cherry pick certain firms that I like to read their assessment reports, even if I've had nothing to do with the assessment, because I want to make sure that they're progressing. And the team often asks me to, you know, to put a quote forward and, you know, like, you know, comment on, you know, how well they've done, or so that you can use it in marketing materials and stuff. And every time I do one for Boosst, it, you know, I almost want to, and I think I have written it, you know, they care that much about the colour coding of the wallpaper in the kitchen. You know, if you're a client, I think you're in safe hands. You know, like, I'm always drawn to that, you know, that level of care. So the fact that you do these, you know, Jennie, you know, Boosst supports our business by putting your trust in us. And that's why it's family, and that's why it absolutely is personal. So, we'll continue to support you in whatever you're doing, in whatever way. So it's been an absolute honour. I love your role, Jenny. I always have loved that role, and I love it when amazing people fill it. And that's why it makes, and we'll do anything we can to support you to be a success in your role, because I so firmly believe that you are the future of this profession, because the more firms that are run by Jennies and, eventually make their way up to the executive teams and sit on those boards, it means that the business owners who aren't natural business owners and leaders can crack on looking after clients, which is what brings all the money in effectively.
Absolutely. And that's their skill set, and that's what they're good at. They've worked really hard to get themselves, they're qualified to the highest possible qualification in Boosst. You can't be a planner without at least a level 6, level 7. They've worked really, really hard. They don't want to be worrying about, what we're going to call this document when we file it. That's not what they should be worried about. They need somebody to delegate all those things out to.
And one thing we haven't said, and we won't expose any details, but during all of this, Keith was quite poorly, wasn't he?
He was, He was really, ahead of Boosst. It was probably when Boosst was born, I would imagine. I would think that they probably came up with, this is what we want to do, when Keith had that time. But it's all still gone to plan because of the support that's around him. And he pressed on, and against all odds, really. So what a wonderful collection of people. And Jenny, as I've said, it's been an absolute honour to do this, and I'm so thrilled for anybody that listens, because you're an aspiration to the role. And if anybody is thinking, I've not got the skills, or I daren't, or they've just got to go for it, haven't they? Absolutely.
As hard as they can.
Absolutely. And I think as well, it's just, if you want to succeed in the role, it's the things that we've said about, you've got to have some balls, because you are going to have to say no occasionally. There are going to have to be difficult conversations. You do feel that kind of HR role as well, as particularly in a small practice. But it's just the most rewarding job. When you see everybody, it's just lovely. It's just lovely to see it all coming together, and seeing the clients have the best outcomes is ultimately what we're all here for.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. Thank you so much. And I look forward to the next instalment, because I think there'll be the Boosst saga will continue. Phase 11. So we'll do this again, and we'll have a regroup. But thank you so much for joining me.
No worries. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.